Before we begin, if stories about alien mind manipulation, psychic bonds, and unexplained emotional memories intrigue you, subscribe to Alien Psyche right now. These stories aren't just strange, they might explain something you felt but never understood. It started with a dream, but unlike other dreams, this one never faded. In fact, it got stronger. Natalie, 34, school teacher from Wyoming, had never believed in aliens. She wasn't spiritual, had no history of mental illness, and lived a quiet, normal life. Until 3 months after her unexplained miscarriage, when the dreams began. She found herself in a room that glowed, not from any light source, but as if the walls themselves were humming. The air was thick, still, silent. She couldn't move, only watch. That's when she saw the child. Small, frail, skin pale like candle wax, thin arms, enlarged head. But the moment their eyes met, her breath caught in her throat. It looked like her. The child's nose, the shape of the lips, they mirrored her baby photos exactly. But its eyes, massive, dark, and liquid, weren't human. Not fully. She tried to speak, to ask what was happening, but no words came. Just a voice, not out loud, but inside her. "This is your child." She jolted awake, heart racing, tears already on her cheeks, and a pain in her stomach, the same place she'd felt life months earlier. Natalie dismissed it at first, a trauma response, her body trying to make sense of the loss. But then it happened again, and again. Same child, same room, same voice. Each time, the child grew older. When Natalie joined a support group for women who had suffered miscarriages, she never expected to hear a familiar phrase from a woman in Ohio. "I keep seeing a little girl in my dreams, and I know she's mine, but she isn't normal." That's when Natalie began researching and fell into a rabbit hole of abduction testimonies, hybrid theories, and regression therapy case studies. To her shock, dozens, hundreds of people around the world had shared the same story. A glowing room, paralysis, a child presented to them, and the overwhelming belief, "This child is mine." These weren't vague, fuzzy feelings. People recalled specific facial features, emotional bonds, even smells. Many had no interest in aliens before it happened. Some, like Natalie, had lost pregnancies. Others claimed to have never even been pregnant, yet still met their hybrid child in dreams, abduction experiences, or sudden flashbacks triggered by scents, colors, or lullabies. It wasn't just women. Men, too, had reported seeing children with their features presented by strange beings with no explanation. Only that haunting inner message, "You created this." Natalie began keeping a journal, and the entries were chilling. She cried when they took her away this time. She's older now, maybe 5. Her name is Elea. "I don't know how I know. I just do. I feel like I failed her." This isn't just a dream. The bond grew stronger, and so did the confusion. Was she going crazy? Or was someone, or something, making her remember something she was never supposed to? After weeks of research, Natalie scheduled a regression session with a well-known hypnotherapist who'd worked with alien experiencers before. Under hypnosis, her calm voice cracked as she described what came next. She was on a table. Beings surrounded her, tall, thin, their heads too large, their eyes black and lidless. cold instruments, pressure, panic, then nothing. Until the white room, until the child, until the unbearable feeling of love mixed with terror. But here's what broke her. They made me hold her. She was trembling. She looked sick. I didn't want to let go, but they pulled her from my arms. I screamed, but it didn't come out, only in my head. And she heard it. She reached for me as they took her back through a silver door. Natalie awoke from the session sobbing and exhausted, and yet somehow relieved, as if she had just remembered something her soul already knew. But now she had more questions than ever. Who were they? Why was she shown this child? Was Alea real? Or was it a psychic illusion, an implanted emotional memory meant to manipulate her into something darker? Natalie had just come out of regression therapy. Her voice cracked as she recalled holding a child that wasn't entirely human, yet somehow felt like her own. Alea, that was the name. It came to her in the session like a whisper, as if the child had said it without speaking. Natalie had never felt love that intense, but it wasn't comforting. It was overwhelming. Too big, too sudden, too programmed. In the weeks following her regression, Natalie noticed something strange. Her emotions felt hijacked. She'd cry at random, while driving, doing dishes, standing in the grocery store. She began waking up with her arms stretched out, reaching for someone who wasn't there. And then came the voice, soft, in her mind. Not daily, just now and then, usually just before sleep. It said, "You are mine," or "I miss you." She told no one, not even her therapist. Not at first, because part of her was afraid, not of being crazy, but of being right. At school, things started slipping. Natalie caught herself almost calling one of her students Alea. During parent-teacher conferences, she stared at a little girl with jet black eyes for too long, until the mother noticed and asked if she was okay. She wasn't. Natalie didn't feel alone in her own head anymore. And it wasn't a haunting, it was a pull, an attachment, something deeper than memory, a link. And one night, it crossed a new line. She dreamed she was in her apartment, not on a ship, not in a white room. But it was wrong. Everything was still, frozen. And then Alea walked in, older now, maybe 7. Her hair thin, her skin almost translucent, but her expression was clear. Sad, scared, and aware. She spoke, out loud this time. "You're forgetting me." Natalie collapsed in the dream, sobbing. "I'm sorry," she whispered, holding the child tight. "I never wanted to leave you." Then, as the child faded, Natalie heard another voice, deeper, foreign, not the child's. Connection restored. She jolted awake, soaked in sweat, heart pounding. And that's when the nosebleed started. The next morning, Natalie found dry blood on her pillow. It wasn't from a dream, and it wouldn't be the last. She began researching again, this time obsessively. She found reports of emotional entrainment, theories that certain abductees are psychically bonded to hybrid children for deeper purposes, not just to comfort them, but to use them, to anchor the hybrid child to the human world, to give the hybrid a reference point, an emotional GPS to understand our species through love, pain, and memory. But there was something even more disturbing. Some abductees reported behavioral shifts after prolonged psychic connection, dissociation from friends and family, identity loss, personality changes, sudden emotional instability, and in some cases, suicide. The theory? That the love wasn't love at all. It was a control system, a psychic leash disguised as bonding. And Natalie had a gut feeling. Alea wasn't reaching out to her out of longing. She was being used as a channel. One night, Natalie tried something new. She sat in bed, lit a candle, and whispered aloud, "I know you're not just a dream. I know you're real, but I don't know what you want." The room got cold. Not physically, but emotionally. And then came the voice again. Familiar now. Chilling. You were chosen to help her feel. You belong to us. Natalie felt her chest tighten. Her hands clenched. She didn't cry this time. She was angry. Chosen? By whom? And for what? That night, she didn't sleep. Natalie had reached her limit. She was no longer just dreaming about Alea. She was seeing her in flashes, in mirrors, reflections, flickers of faces in crowds that vanished when she blinked. And she wasn't alone. Her phone began acting strangely, notifications vanishing, photos corrupted. Once, a picture she didn't remember taking appeared in her gallery. It showed her asleep, her arms outstretched as if cradling someone. But no one was there. The nosebleeds continued. The dreams got shorter, but more intense. Alea stopped speaking. Now, she only stared. Natalie sensed something had shifted. The child was no longer reaching out with emotion, but with expectation. Natalie had played her part. Now came the next phase. That night, it wasn't a dream. Natalie was wide awake, journaling, surrounded by soft light, when everything stopped. The air became still. The hum in the walls disappeared. Time bent. And then, standing in her hallway, not in a white room or dreamscape, was Alea. Not projected, not imagined, but present. She looked older, taller. Her eyes glowed faintly. Her body was thin but stronger, and her skin was no longer sickly pale. It shimmered faintly, like static on a screen. Natalie couldn't move, not from fear, but from recognition. This wasn't a hallucination. It wasn't a psychic memory, it was real. And when Alea stepped forward and gently touched Natalie's face, a surge of emotion flooded her. Love, grief, peace, and total surrender. Her knees gave out. Natalie wasn't sure how long they stood like that. Time folded into itself. Thoughts weren't thoughts, they were downloads. She didn't hear words. She absorbed knowledge. Visions. Fragments. A spacecraft in orbit. A lab with tanks. Other hybrid children. Other humans, some awake, some sedated, all being connected to the hybrids. Natalie understood. Her bond with Alea was not an accident. It was part of a larger process, a human hybrid emotional tethering program. The goal? Empathy-based integration. Each hybrid child needed a human parent, not just to stabilize them, but to anchor their emerging identity. Without that bond, the hybrids became emotionally unstable, dissociative, incapable of merging into human society. The memory of Natalie's miscarriage wasn't a random tragedy. It was the trigger event. It opened the door, left a scar, created an emotional void, one they could fill perfectly. Natalie was the key, and she wasn't alone. There were thousands like her. The most disturbing part, she felt okay with it. In fact, in that moment, she wanted to help. It felt natural, necessary, even beautiful. And that's when it hit her, the final manipulation. The connection wasn't just emotional, it was neurological. Engineered love, constructed loyalty, her body's chemicals, her neurons, all triggered like a switch. They weren't just creating hybrid children, they were reprogramming the parents. When Alea finally let go, Natalie looked down to find her arms empty. Alea had vanished, or faded. She didn't know which, but her apartment was warm again. No blood, no fear, just silence, and a strange clarity. She was never going to be the same, but she also didn't feel broken. She felt chosen. Days later, Natalie began receiving encrypted emails from someone claiming to be a former military contractor. The messages were fragmented, but clear enough. You're part of Phase 3 now. They no longer need consent. They only need cooperation. And you've already given it. She tried replying. The address bounced. Then came the final photo. It showed Alea standing in what looked like a schoolyard, surrounded by other children, all with similar features, all smiling. At the bottom of the image, ready. So, was it real? Is Natalie's story a warning about genetic experimentation? Or is she one of thousands who've had their grief and trauma hacked into obedience, bonded to something not of this world? And what happens when these hybrid children return for good? Let us know in the comments. Do you think Natalie's experience was part of a secret hybrid integration program? Or a tragic illusion implanted into her mind? Subscribe to Alien Psyche for more deep dives into the psychology of alien contact, memory manipulation, and emotional control. Because if they found a way to use our love against us, what else have they learned to do?